Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson saying that the violence in the streets is from generations of disinvestment, and he even points some of the blame at Richard Nixon. Plus, you've got him talking about a political party that he says is shielding the gun industry. All of this after headlines over the holiday weekend. Since July 4th, more than 100 people shot, 19 killed, and police and officials yesterday holding a news conference to react to that. But we'll obviously take a look at that and some other issues around the context of what's going on there. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you for taking time. Again, the headlines out of Chicago, more than 100 shot, and you had 19 killed. That was by yesterday morning from July 4th to July 8th in the early morning hours. Here is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson yesterday talking about the headlines and why they're holding a news conference to address violence.
We are standing here today talking about a violent weekend because of generations of disinvestment and deep disenfranchisement in the exact communities where so much of the violence is taking place. But we are here to say emphatically that this is enough. It's enough. When this reckless violence ravages across our city at this magnitude, we are losing a piece of the soul of Chicago. And it deeply pains me to admit that, but it is true.
And again, the mayor, speaking in the aftermath of these headlines and how tragic and just horrible they are. And if you do have time, you might want to go watch some of the entirety of that news conference. You can find it on the City of Chicago and the police department's Facebook page, for instance. But it's clearly not for the faint of heart to hear some of the details of these violent crimes. But the mayor goes on to talk about how it's personal to him.
Yeah, it is personal. Black death has been unfortunately accepted in this country for a very long time. We had a chance 60 years ago to get at the root causes, and people mocked President Johnson. And we ended up with Richard Nixon.
So that comment there is something I think is getting a lot of attention, and even the attention of the Richard Nixon Foundation, which posted on X, Mayor Johnson's reference to President Nixon is gratuitous, and the facts are not on his side in his characterization of Richard Nixon and the Nixon administration's civil rights record. It goes on with a string here, a thread. He says in 1971, the Nixon administration developed a plan to carry out the 1954 SCOTUS decision in Brown v. Board of Education to desegregate all schools in the South. Goes on with more stats and figures from various years throughout the Nixon efforts. From 69 to 72, federal funding for civil rights programs grew from 75 million to more than 600 million, the equivalent of more than 3.4 billion today. And continues on with thread after thread. So clearly, the Chicago mayor's reference there getting a lot of attention again from even the likes of the Richard Nixon Foundation.
Yeah, it is personal. Black death has been unfortunately accepted in this country for a very long time. We had a chance 60 years ago to get at the root causes, and people mocked President Johnson. And we ended up with Richard Nixon.
So fascinating to see how the mayor responds to questions about the root causes here and just exactly how far he goes. But he also went on to blame a political party he says is shielding the gun industry.
The fact that it's so easy to get guns in the city of Chicago and cities across America, to me, that's the crime. You have an entire political party that is protecting a lobbyist entity to make sure that illegal guns can flow through the streets of places like Chicago and Baltimore, Miami, Los Angeles. To me, that is criminal. It should be brought up on charges.
So he talks about how the gun lobby, I guess, is how you can characterize what his focus of attention was there, bringing them up on charges. But ultimately, the mayor did get around to talking about accountability for the violent criminals on the streets of Chicago, leading to the headlines of 100 shot and 19 killed. Here's the mayor.
But I will not stand idly by. We will not be passive in this moment. We need to ensure that we are holding every single individual accountable for the pain and trauma and the torment that they have caused in this city. And there will be consequences. There will be consequences for the violence. We will not let criminal activity ruin and harm our city.
So how exactly are they going to do that? It wasn't just the mayor talking yesterday. You also had Police Superintendent Larry Snelling address the media. Snelling gave some really grim details of some of the various violent crimes that have been happening in the city since this past weekend. But he also talked about how sometimes people look at policing, and is that the problem?
When we look at what happened this weekend, we always like to say that it's a police issue. This is a societal issue. The police cannot be in everybody's backyard. They cannot be in everyone's home. They cannot invade every single gathering where there's a possibility that someone may show up with a gun. Everything that we do as a police department is based on reasonable suspicion to investigate or probable cause for an arrest. So what we need to look at is the responsibility of everyone.
And I would imagine everyone's community members, family members, and the like. And police also saying that they make arrests when they can, and the public's help in that really does drive those investigations. But Snelling also repeating time and again that they have to go after the bad actors and get the state's attorney to file those charges. Comptroller Susana Mendoza, a prominent Democrat in Illinois, she posted she agrees with Superintendent Snelling. Quote, "We have to really stop and think about the mindset of someone who will shoot a child, a helpless child, an unarmed mother, and think that that's okay and go about their days," he said. She goes on to say that those people have to be taken off the streets. They have to be put away. If we're not doing that, then we're failing other families. So Comptroller Susana Mendoza agreeing with the sentiments that these bad actors have to be dealt with by the state's attorney's office more aggressively. So just some of the things happening in Chicago. Controversial comments obviously making the rounds, and people commenting on that. And we'll continue to follow it and maybe hear some reaction from Republicans as to the mayor seeming to point at Republicans, which, by the way, I mean, there hasn't been a Republican administration in Chicago for decades, generations, some would say. I don't have the exact date, but it's been a long time. So it is Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we give you the headlines to keep you plugged in and informed. And we'll see you back here with America's Talking Network and Illinois in Focus Daily.
Okay.